Fantastic. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next in the series of Doing Business on Purpose webinars. I'm delighted that you can join us today. We're going to be talking about how to find your passion and purpose and turn that into a business. It's a grey old morning in Sydney today, but hopefully the sun will come out this afternoon. Had a little bit of rain, but that's not too bad because we do need a little bit of rain. We've got more people joining us as we go, which is fantastic. What I might do is just remind everybody that the way that the webinar works, in that you can ask questions, and in fact we encourage you to ask questions if you've got something that you want to raise, and you can do it a couple of different ways. As you can see on your screen now, there's a little hand there in your GoToWebinar controls, and that allows you to put your hand up, almost as if you're in a classroom, I suppose. Put your hand up and say, please, I'd like to ask something. Or you can just simply type your question into the question box. We will have, hopefully, some time at the end for some open questions. But if you have a question along the way, please ask. Just to make sure that everybody can hear me, and just to make sure that everybody can see my screen, could I just get people to just put their hands up and let me know that you can hear me, first of all? Beautiful, thank you. I've got lots of hands going up. That's excellent. And can you all, okay, so I'll just put everybody's hands down now. That's great. And now if you could, perhaps if I could just get you to type into the question box, can you see the screen with the GoToWebinar control panel on it? If you could just type a yes in there, that would be great. Beautiful. Lots of yeses coming up now. Fantastic, thank you. It's all working. I'm excited. The other thing that I would suggest to you today is that if you possibly can, and I know it's a real temptation to multitask when you're on the webinar, but if you can, give yourself the gift of focus, because the gift of focus for this period of time will be very, very worthwhile for you. So, what are we going to cover today? What are we going to go through this morning? Well, everybody wants their ideal life. Everybody wants to be happy, fulfilled, energized, inspired, and to feel worthwhile, have a sense of meaningful contribution. So how do you get all of that? How do you get the understanding and clarity around your core drivers and some tools for some effective decision making, and ideally a roadmap for the journey? Well, Laurence, I can hear you very loudly in the background there, so if I could just ask you to adjust your mic again, please, that would be great. Today, what we're asking you to do, what we're inviting you to do, is to listen into a conversation between Laurence and I. And if you like, join in and certainly ask your questions along the way. The reason why I've invited Laurence to this particular webinar is because he wrote a little book called The 7 Steps to Aligning with Your Soul Purpose. And that's very much in line with the concept that we're going to talk about, and I have spoken about previously, being building a higher purpose business. The preemptor of all of that, of course, is that you understand what your higher purpose is. And that's what today is largely about, is helping you to understand what your higher purpose is all about. So we'll look at various ways that you can identify what exactly it is that you feel you're compelled to do and how you can turn that into a business. So perhaps I should just take a minute or so and tell you about myself and about, ask Laurence to tell you about himself, and we'll introduce Laurence in just a moment. When I first started my career, when I was growing up as a kid, I was one of these children who didn't know what I wanted to do. And at 16, I nearly dropped out of school. I tried lots and lots of things: accounting, economics, banking, the army even, hospitality, and eventually fell into recruitment and became very good at it. And it was fantastic because the money was great. But after a period of time, it was around about 8 years or so, I just started losing interest in it. And although I was still very good at it, I stayed in it for the money, not because it was something that I really wanted to do. I had a couple of significant business ventures, and even a couple, had a number of startups, some businesses that went global. I made some really bad choices along the way, and had a few deals that turned quite sour, and that cost me a great deal in terms of money, and even my health and almost my sanity, I have to say. So I went back to basics at that point in time, and I looked at my values. I looked at what I had a passion for, and I didn't consider to be work. And I also looked at the things that I didn't want to do, and I decided to bring my passions into my business, and I became a teacher, a coach, a consultant, sharing what had worked for me and what hadn't worked for me. And when I did that, I got great results for my clients. And so I've now living my purpose and my mission, which is to bring soul to business and business to soul. Laurence, would you mind telling us your story? And welcome, by the way.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Well, like you, I had a very diverse background, but the thing for me was that through all these different careers that I had an active interest in astrology. And because I was a bit concerned that people might think I was a bit weird or something like that, I wouldn't talk to people about my real passion, which was the astrology side of things. And I've been working in that now for nearly 40 years, and it would be, that I'd talk quietly to specific people and say, oh, look, I do this, would you like to give that a go? And the feedback that I was getting, I had one lady, for instance, who commented that on a turnover of $500,000 each year, that with the work that she'd done with me, it was saving her $50,000.
Wow.
And a number of people said that, who have achieved amazing things, have said, well, I couldn't have done it without your input. And so I realized that there was a real talent there as well as a passion, and so have focused my business on the astrology side of things.
Fantastic.
And that's what I'm doing now, and it's great.
Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the astrology. Why don't we start with the most important question, which is really defining what purpose is, and whether that's soul purpose or higher purpose. What exactly is purpose from your point of view?
Well, for me, it's about the thing that really drives you. It's the thing that gives you passion. It's what motivates you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And the thing is that for many people, we're so disconnected with our true purpose, that really sort of deep, meaningful thing, that we go through our lives, as it says, in a state of quiet desperation. And so it's reconnecting with that, with what's going on really deep inside you. And as the slide says there, it's about who you're being. It's not what you're doing. It's not about being a fireman or a teacher or anything like that. It's what really drives you, and that could be a need to change the world, to save the world, or it could be that it's about bringing up a fantastic family and providing a fantastic home life for your friends and people around you.
We hear so many labels attached to purpose, don't we? Things like destiny or your path or your journey, your higher purpose, your calling even. What I find really interesting is the difference between something like that and something that we really, really want to do, but probably we could categorize more as a whim. A whim is a little bit more selfish and perhaps a little bit more temporary, whereas the sort of purpose you're talking about is something that is all-consuming. That I think you said the other day that if it happens whether you want it to happen or not.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the example that I used before with myself, that I had all these different careers where I was trying different things and couldn't quite get anything to get any traction. But through all that, there was kind of a little hobby that I had that just stayed there in the background. And when I focused on it, I realized that that was something that I was really good at and got great results in. And I think that's often the case, is that we have this sort of thing going on in the background that we try and ignore, try and push aside. We both have a friend, Joanna Maxwell, and she tells a fantastic story that she grew up in a family of lawyers, and she was destined to be a lawyer. And she was a lawyer for quite a few years and was quite successful at it, but she hated it. And she got to the point where one day she was ready to go to work, got to her front door, and literally couldn't open the front door. So she went back, sat down, had to think about it, did a whole lot of stuff, and then decided that she had to do something that was completely different. And I think that's the thing with purpose, is that it might not be a great passion that you realize or something that you feel is really driving you, but it's just sitting quietly in the background, and it's there constantly, and every so often it bobs up and things like that.
Well, we'll have a look in a few minutes as to how you can identify that. But just hearing you talking about Joanna reminds me of a quote by Eckhart Tolle, which says, instead of asking, what do I want from life, a more powerful question is, what does life want from me?
I think that's such a wonderful question.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I think some of the stuff that comes out of that man's mouth or pen is quite amazing. There's another quote that I'm just going to throw up on the screen now. I don't expect everybody to read the whole thing, but the essence of this is the bit that I've highlighted there in yellow, which is, we've said yes to some sacred arrangement in the ethers, and here on earth, until we live our most meaningful dreams, we ache with the pangs of blessings unfulfilled. That's that compulsion that you were talking about, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. There's this thing that sort of sits in the background, and we find that we're drawn to particular movies or particular events and things like that. And we can't really explain what our interest in those areas is, but we know there's a drawing there. And we're being pulled towards it.
Well, is it perhaps related to the next slide?
Sure. The story of the little apple tree, which is one of my favourite stories, is there's a little apple tree in the forest, and because it's quite small, the branches of the other trees hang over it. And as the apple tree looks up, it sees the stars, and it thinks that the stars are in the branches of these big trees. And its desire is to have stars in its branches, and through all the seasons it just keeps wishing for stars in its branches. And then one day somebody comes along, and they take one of the beautiful apples that this apple tree has produced and cuts it in half. And instead of cutting it longitudinally, or sort of the way we normally cut it, he cut it horizontally, and this is the result. And what you see there is that the apple tree did actually have stars in its branches. It's just that it wasn't aware of it. And so many of us are like that we have this passion within us, this ability within us, the thing that we're really here to achieve. And we put so many layers on top of it, and we wish for it, and yet we can't see that we've actually got it there. I mean, I know, for me, I keep coming back to the astrology because that's a personal example, that I'd been interested in astrology, and I would talk quietly to people about astrology, and I would always think about it and things like that, and it very much determined my view of the world, but I wouldn't talk to people about it. And I had big doubts about my ability in it. And yet once I opened up and started to allow myself to express what was there, I found that there is this amazing ability, and the feedback I get from people is just incredible.
For me,
and it's the same thing with the apple seed.
Thank you. For me, my passion, which I pushed aside for so many years, is the performing arts. And as soon as I started to bring that into my business, and it's not that I sing and dance my way through my business, but as soon as I started to bring elements of the arts into my work, all of a sudden I started to come alive. So it's very similar. And without wanting to use too much of a fruit analogy, I like to think about it like when you squeeze an orange or a lemon or some other citrus fruit. When you squeeze them, what comes out of the fruit is, of course, the juice, but essentially it's what's on the inside. And when we squeeze human beings, the same thing happens. what comes out is what's on the inside. So knowing what's on the inside and knowing what your soul purpose is pretty powerful stuff.
Yes, and it usually takes that squeezing for us to realise. Now what we've got here, for instance, from an apple seed, the analogy that I use is that like an apple has a seed contained inside of it, we have a seed inside of ourselves, which I call a soul seed. Now, using the apple seed, you can produce apple trees. You can produce a great big productive apple tree, or you can produce a bonsai. But what you're not going to get out of an apple seed, irrespective of what you do, is carrots. And a lot of people spend their lives trying to produce carrots when their soul seed is an apple. And that, coming back to Joanna Maxwell, being a lawyer, she was trying to produce carrots where her soul seed was saying she's got to do something else, and she now has a wonderful business with coaching and working in the corporate world, doing all sorts of really interesting things around creativity.
Mm. Yeah, she's a very creative lady. She had to have that realization that being a lawyer was trying to produce carrots, and it just didn't work for her. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So it begs the question then, the obvious question is, how do you find your higher purpose or your soul purpose or your calling? So perhaps we can have a look at some of the ways that you can do that, because the interesting thing is when I was researching this, I came across so many modalities. You can look at numerology, you can look at meditation, you can pray, you can do yoga, there's Reiki, there's Tai Chi, there's obviously we've got in the middle there, we've got the astrological stuff, we've got tarot, we've got the other one, of course, which a lot of people do, is contemplation, just simply thinking and reflection. But Laurence, tell us a bit about how the astrological side of it works.
Well, the thing there is, if we move to the next slide, is a diagram that I got from Sir John Whitmore, and it represents the self. And we see there's the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious. Now, most of the tools that we have operate in the area of the conscious and subconscious. But if we want to connect with what our soul purpose is, we've really got to find tools that work in that superconscious and higher self area. Now, astrology uses the time, date, and place of your birth. That's all it uses. And one of the things that I find is if you get into things like profiling and NLP and psychotherapy and all those things that involve thinking, then what happens is that if I think that I'm a carrot because my parents told me that you're going to be a carrot, then what my thinking does is work on, well, how do I produce bigger and better carrots? It doesn't connect me with that thing that's deep down inside myself that I keep burying. And so we need tools that work in a completely different way. And that's where I find that astrology, things like tarot and numerology, which get completely outside of our thinking modalities, because we can't really explain in a sort of normal sense how those things work. But so for me, energetically, when we're born, we are aligned, we're part of the universe. Our soul has picked a particular time, date, and place to be born, so that its energies are aligned with that of the whole universe. And if you understand astrology, then that gives you a set of symbols that you can then read to be able to say, well, this is what makes you up, this is what really drives you, this is what you're here for.
There's another modality I'd probably would put on this diagram as well, which we've talked about before, which is archetypes. And I probably would put them in the top section, in the superconscious higher self area, but they definitely bridge over to the subconscious as well too. So I suppose what I'm saying is that John Whitmore's diagram is a fantastic diagram, and thank you so much for presenting it today. But I think that there are many, many more modalities, but we choose the ones that talk to us. And for you,
Absolutely.
obviously, astrology works brilliantly. I've used a number of different things, and we've done some astrology stuff as well too. Um, but it's not about saying you must use this modality or this modality, because people are different.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a matter of horses for courses. I have some interesting conversations with Joanna Maxwell because she's certainly not into astrology.
Hmm.
And so, yes, there are lots and lots of different ways.
Okay.
But, as you say, we've got to find the one that really resonates and works for us. And astrology works for me.
Excellent. Well, that's why you're here. Now, look, I want to come back to that whole issue of we've got some tools which we want to give everybody who's on the call and listening to the recording about finding your purpose. But one of the questions that comes up just before we do that is this whole issue of staying on purpose. And I want to pose to you, Laurence, the whole issue of if things are really hard, and for a lot of people they are pretty hard, how do you know if you're not on purpose, or whether what you're doing is actually on purpose but you're just having a hard time? Laurence, are you still there? Laurence, I seem to have lost you. Okay, seem to have lost me too. Okay, can anybody hear me? If I could just get hands up, please, if anyone can hear me. Okay, so somebody can hear me. Oh, great. Thank you, everybody. You can hear me. Laurence, it looks like it might be you. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you coming back and letting me know that you can hear me. So, Laurence, it's you that I think we've lost. I'll just type him a quick note. Okay. Found your purpose. Okay. Thank you, Kim. What I'd like to do while Laurence is finding his way back in, what I'd like to do is to just talk about how I came to my purpose, just for a minute or so, if you would, because it's a really interesting story. Bottom line is I reached a pretty low point in my business life. My personal life was fantastic. My family was very supportive. I've got a loving wife and 3 wonderful children, and have been married for a long, long time. And things are going absolutely brilliantly on that front. But from a business point of view, I had, as I said earlier in my introduction, made a few mistakes and reached a bit of a low point. And the thing that helped me get back on track was simply coming back and focusing on what were the core things that really, I suppose, gave me energy as opposed to drained me of energy. And the way that I was able to do that was by thinking about the things that I'd done in the past. I was sitting, I remember sitting in an audience once. I was hearing Dennis Waitley speak. I don't know if any of you remember Dennis Waitley. He was I think he's passed away now, but he was an American psychologist, and he became an inspirational speaker. And we were sitting at the town hall, and I was down the front left-hand side, and Dennis Waitley stood on stage and said to the audience, there would have been, I guess, 500 people there, "What did you used to do as a child that you absolutely love doing, but you don't do anymore? And how can you bring that into your work?" And I just looked up at him, because the stage is quite elevated. I just looked up and said, I have to be up on stage. And at the time, I thought that meant that I had to be a public speaker. What I realized later was that it didn't really matter what the mode was. And so I started pursuing theatrical work, and I did some TV commercials and some short films and some choral work and so on. And that was all pretty, that all worked pretty well. And but I found that I wasn't able to connect my work and my passions. And I actually found that where I was in a space where my life began afterwards. And so I think we might have Laurence back now. I'll just quickly finish this story. And so then I started to bring those elements into my work. So that's when I created the business stage model. And I'll talk about that very briefly shortly. And I started to look for ways that I could bring performance into my work. In fact, I even used to bring music into what I was doing. I spent some time in recruitment, quite some time, and we used to have a little celebration whenever we made a placement, essentially, because it was quite a significant thing. And the first time I made a placement, I brought in a cassette recorder. I had cassettes at the time, and I put the Rocky music on really loud, and I stood up on the desk and I danced. And the reaction that I got from people, they looked at me in absolute disbelief. But for me, it was a way of celebrating. It was a way of being on my stage and saying, hey, look at me. I am so excited about what I've just achieved, which was my first placement. And so it was so many things like that that along the way I gathered all of these clues as to what was interesting to me. Now, Laurence, have we got you back now?
I think so.
We do indeed. Fantastic. That's great. Okay,
The
so
joys of technology.
indeed. We've been having a good time without you, though. No offence.
Yeah, it sounded like I missed a really exciting part.
I'll tell you about the story later. Anyway, let's come back to the question of staying on purpose, because you've got a really interesting model about that. And this is when times are tough. How do you know that you're not off track, or that you are actually perhaps on purpose, but you're just going through a tough time?
Yeah, well, we'll go through this very quickly. As you see along the bottom there, that this diagram represents your life. Along the bottom is the material things, and on the vertical is the spiritual, the inspirational things that drive us. Now, what happens is that we go through school, university. The objective is to have the job with all the toys and things like that. And very often we come to a point, people who are very successful, from an overt perspective, and they have a crisis of meaning. They've got all the things, but somehow life just doesn't have any meaning to it. And so that could be brought on by health, or just realizing that things aren't working and stuff like that. So they refocus, cut back on their time that they're doing, and spend time on things that are inspirational. The other thing that you get is, as you've got up there, the crisis of materiality. People who are very good on the inspirational side of things, and this is very common in the natural therapies world, where people are able to really help a lot. They have these great talents, but they're broke. And so the ideal is that we have this central line, which is our soul, what I call our soul purpose, which is the next slide.
Sorry.
And got to stay with the program here, David. So what our ideal is that we are a combination of material and spiritual. And we should be traveling somehow this purpose line. And that's our soul saying to us, this is where I want you to be. The further we get away from our core purpose, we find that there's pain there. Now that can be health issues, it could be feeling depressed and stuff like that, and it's just a question of how much pain we can tolerate before we have either a crisis of meaning or a crisis of materiality. Now what we should be trying to achieve is this line where we're not going to those great extremes that we had, but we're operating along this central axis. And you can't stay it all the time. But what you can do is, if you know what that purpose is, then you've got some criteria that you could say, okay, I'm getting a bit off track, I need to realign myself. And so it's a constant adjusting. You know, when they send a spaceship to the moon and Mars and things like that, those vehicles are on track only 3% of the time, and yet they manage to land at exactly where we want them to be on a planet that is millions of kilometers away. In our lives, 3% of the time means that if we get one day a month that's right for us, then life really is pretty much perfect. Now that doesn't mean there's no challenges and there's no obstacles and things like that, because there's always this thing of realigning. And very often the obstacles are because what we're trying to achieve is so great, so important, that the forces against us will put up challenges and try to stop us doing what it is that we're here for. And that's your point about how do we know if we're just having a hard time at the moment or whether we're completely off track. Is that the pain that we're experiencing?
I think the thing is that sometimes we look at things that happen and we label them failures, but that's because we don't have the perspective on them yet. And sometimes it's just about trusting that whatever's happening for you is happening for a reason. And that's not to necessarily be a defeatist or just say, look, it's all predetermined. But more often than not, it's the universe giving us messages to teach us something or to help us grow exactly stronger right for the next challenge that's coming.
Yeah, well, I think it's also those, as I had in that diagram that we just had up there, that level of pain is a message from the universe saying you're getting off track. And the further you get off track, the more pain you're going to experience. So if we can respond to that, if we can understand that it's a message to us to actually help us, yes, it strengthens us and all that sort of stuff, but it helps us to realign, because it's not just a matter of breaking through the pain barrier and keeping going. Very often it's to realign ourselves. It's the universe saying, get back on track. You're drifting away. And that's its way of saying, this is where you should be.
And sometimes that's not doing more, trying harder, striving, pushing, making it happen. Sometimes it's actually stepping back and giving yourself a little bit of space.
Exactly. Yeah, and spending some time. One of my favorite quotes is from the Dalai Lama, who says, I've got so much to do, I'm going to have to meditate twice as long.
I like that one.
And so the point there is, as you were saying, what we tend to do is try and do more, and that comes back to my apple and carrots. We try and produce bigger and better carrots, whereas what we've got to do is stop, look at some other way of approaching things and looking at, is this a message from the universe to say I'm off track? And there's lots of ways to do that.
Thank you, Laurence. The next issue, which you've heard me talk about higher purpose business quite a bit, and I've mentioned it even today. I thought it would be useful to quickly define what a higher purpose business is so that we're actually all on the same page. And there's really three elements around a higher purpose business. The first one is that the business is based around the values, aspirations, goals, and purpose of the owner of the business. And that's why we're talking about finding your own purpose. The second element, or the second way that a business can be a higher purpose, is that itself, the business, has a higher purpose. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that in a minute. And then the third way is that the business is operating holistically in its environment from a very high purpose point of view. And John DeMartini has an expression which I really love, which is about making your vacation your avocation. And I think that that's really interesting when we sort of move on to, in a moment I'll show you how you know whether you're in a higher purpose environment or not, because if you're doing what you love doing, then it feels like you're on vacation. I absolutely love this quote. I don't know the authors, but obviously I found the book. But what it's saying is that the reason that we have a business is that the business is invariably there to help us fulfill our purpose or fulfill our mission. And I just think that's a really nice take. Sometimes it's about making money to help us, to enable us to do other things, because a high purpose business should be a win-win commercial model. You provide value for your customers and they reward you appropriately, and so you get to stay in business and you keep delivering value to your customers. So there's a win-win. But also, you can use the money that you earn from the business to do whatever you want. And that could be, for example, to give it all away. So therefore, you've got a win-win-win. Most of us will start off life not knowing what it is that we want to do. And all too often, we'll be in the bottom left-hand quadrant. Across the horizontal, you've got your ideals, your personal ideals. And down the vertical, you've got the values of the organization in which you're working. Whether it's your company or it's someone else's company, it really doesn't matter. And down in this bottom left, neither your soul is being fulfilled or are you making money. So we don't want to be there. We want to get out of there as quickly as possible. In the top left, we've got you making money, but you're not doing the work that fulfills you. And this is where I was when I was in the recruitment scenario. And I found that, yes, I could make the money and I could feed my family and pay the mortgage, but I just wasn't fulfilled. And my life began after I'd finished work. Where a lot of people will go, and these are like the practitioners you were talking about, the holistic practitioners, Laurence, they'll go down to the bottom right where they're doing their soul's work, but they haven't got a business model that monetizes that effectively. So they end up going broke, or they end up having to go back to the job or not being able to survive. Clearly where we want to be is in the top right-hand corner, where we're doing our soul's work, where we're fulfilling our mission, and we've got a way of monetizing that. And that's what I call a higher purpose business. A higher purpose business is one that sits in the top right-hand corner. The other interesting thing about this model is that on the left-hand side, you've got motivation. And motivation tends to be move away from something. You do something because you need to do it in order to avoid the consequences of not doing it. Whereas on the right-hand side, you're more inspired. And it makes sense because you've got your hearts there ticked. But inspiration is different because inspiration wells up from within you. And inspiration is that motivation's important, don't get me wrong, but inspiration will get you up earlier and keep you going longer and will lead you to the place where you don't think of work as work, but you think of it as play. So turning that into a business is the key. So yes, we've identified what do you do well and what you love, and when you've got the intersection of that, you've got passion and purpose. And this is essentially what we've been driving towards, is to find what your soul purpose is. But there's another issue in order to turn this into a business that's going to make you money and get you to that top right. And that's identifying what is it that the world needs. And yet there's a problem just with that alone, because if you just look at that intersection, then you've got charity. The final element that's missing is what will the world pay for? And when you've got the intersection of what the world needs and the world will pay for, you've got a business, what the world will pay for in a career, and what you do well, then you've got a career. So that was like my recruitment. But this is where the magic happens, right in the middle, where you've got the intersection of all of those. That's where the real bliss happens. And this is really when you've got a higher purpose business. So a business that is fulfilling you, and you've got a commercial model around it that allows you to make money and survive and prosper. Here's an example of one high-purpose business, a company called Tom's. And you can see just up in the top, with every pair you purchase, Tom's will give a pair of new shoes to a child in need, 1 for 1. So that's an example of where the business itself has a higher purpose. Another example is the Body Shop, where the way they operate is very holistically. They're very conscious of their environment, and they're obviously their sourcing of products and their testing of products and so on. For them, their higher purpose is based around the way that they actually do business. So how do you build your purpose into a higher purpose business? It's all very well to define it, but we need to have a quick look at how you actually do it. And Da Vinci says, make your work be in keeping with your purpose. Nice quote. This is the point that I made about you need to make money from your business, and you can choose to use the money in whatever way you want. Sesame Street is a good example of a business that's another high purpose one. Its focus is not on providing entertainment, but it's actually on educating children. Some of you may have heard of Thank You Water, and we don't need more bottled water in Australia, but they make profits from selling the bottled water here, and that directly funds water projects in developing countries. Clean Event is a cleaning company, but at the same time, it's not about picking up garbage. It's assisting people to make the most of their leisure events by enjoying a clean environment. What's the point of highlighting these particular examples? The point is that these companies have found a higher purpose in what they do. The skeptical people could look at them and go, it's just bottled water, it's just cleaning, it's just kids' TV. But they've actually realized what their higher purpose is. And that's the challenge for all of us, is to look at what our purpose is and say, how can I build that into what I do? And what I do that in my work with bringing soul to business and business to soul. That's my higher purpose. And connected to that is unlocking the magnificence inside every woman. And I even put, higher purpose business underneath Quiddity. And another time, if we have the time, I'll define what Quiddity means for you. Laurence, you have a higher purpose business too, don't you?
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, it's I find working with successful women, because they're aware of, they're on that material axis that I was talking about, but trying to connect with that sense of meaning. And so for me, it's about getting them connected at that point to what they're really here for. And because they already have a business, and what we could usually do is tweak their business so that it enables them to fulfill what it is that they're really wanting to do. And I gave you the example right at the beginning of a lady who, her business was quite successful. She was turning over $500,000 a year, and yet she kept getting distracted. People would say to her, look, you're really good at this, or you're really good at that, and she'd go off and she'd try this thing and try that thing. And once she got really clear on her purpose through what we were doing together, she said it saved her $50,000. And a lot of what I find is that people are working in a space that can work for them, but they need a business model that is going to enable their passion to come through, where they're doing the stuff that they love and can get other people on board to do the things that they personally don't want to do. And so, sort of helping them get their business working in alignment with their real passion. And so the first step, as we've been talking about today, is identifying what your passion is, what your purpose is, and then looking at what's going on in your world and how do we make that commercial for you.
I think you must be a mind reader, Laurence, because it's this was always going to be the next slide.
It's part of the job spec.
Yeah, it was always going to be the next slide, but it's really, my whole thing about success is that it's personal. And so if you're going to build a business, surely you would want to build that around how you define a successful business to be. Whether it's simply to pay the school fees, or to pay off the mortgage a bit sooner, or to provide an extra holiday a year for the family, or whether it's to build the next McDonald's, it really doesn't matter, because it's your definition of success that counts. And it should be your financial, lifestyle and other goals and aspirations, rather than what society says they should be. And for some reason, I don't know why, but we consistently let others dictate what it means to be successful. What about things like health and happiness and peace and love, just for starters? They should get measured more than they currently do. So it's about getting your business to work for you rather than you working for it. Because there are so many different ways to measure success, and it needs to be sustainable. It needs to be profitable. It needs to be profitable 3 different ways: financially, emotionally, and spiritually. Ideally, you want your business to be magic, and you want your clients to love you, and all of that will bring you to a position of flow, where your business is an extension of your heart and your soul. And it, as I said, it just flows smoothly. And then, okay, you always get your issues, but it isn't a really huge problem, because you know that you're doing what you love. And this is why I developed the business stage business model. It actually, the inspiration for this was a quote by Shakespeare, where he said, all the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. And my rationale behind that is that, well, if that's the case, every business operates on a business stage. And around that business stage, there are 4 key things: the script, the cast, the audience, and the production team. The script is, why does the business exist? What's its plan? What's its exit strategy? What's its raison d'etre? What's its unique positioning in the market, the cast are the people who are in the business and operate it, the leadership and also the rest of the ensemble. The audience is your marketplace, and everyone's in your marketplace. Your customers, your competitors, your collaborators, and all of the potential. And your production team is everything that allows the cast to go on stage every day and to perform. So your systems, your processes, your structures, could be technology, could be production, could be distribution, depends totally on the business. And the challenge is to get them all working in the right balance so that you end up with a diamond, a gem of a business that is an ongoing blockbuster performance rather than a short run, or worse still, an opening night flop. That's the last thing that we actually want. So, Laurence, we've prepared 3 resources that we think people could be very interested in terms of helping them to find their higher purpose or their soul purpose. And the first one is a gift from yourself.
Yes, it's a booklet that I wrote a little while ago called 7 Steps to Aligning with Your Soul Purpose, and it just goes through a little bit of what we're talking about, but how to stage the process and what you need to go through. So you can get that from getyoursoulpurpose.com, and I'm also now producing that as a booklet so that you can carry it around with your little workbook. So if people want to write to me at that address, lawrence@aviel.com.au, happy to arrange to get one sent out to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laurence. The second resource that we've got for everybody is a list of questions to help you understand what's your purpose. And here's the tricky part. Because a higher purpose comes from your passion, we want to uncover what you're passionate about, but yet passion can't be found in your head because it lives in your heart. So how do we go about what is essentially a rational process, a thinking process, to uncover what's in our heart? So we've come up with a list of questions, and I would be happy, and I'll throw them up on the screen now, but I'd be happy to send these out to everybody in a handout. If you'd like them, just let me know. Everybody will get an email after the webinar telling them where the replay is. So just shoot a quick reply back to me if you'd like the handout, and I'll send those through to you straight away. But there are some really, really great questions here that will get you not only thinking, but will get you feeling. And again, I'll just leave those questions. Oops, sorry, I'll just go back one. So I'll just leave those questions up there for a second in case people are watching the recording and they just want to pause and jot them down. But then here's the trick. As best you can, check in with your heart and your physical body as opposed to your head. And look for the things that perhaps light you up, or notice what's happening in your body and see if you can feel a sense of expansion, or maybe there's a voice in your head that's just going, yeah, that's it. That's what I should be doing, or that's where I need to be spending more of my time, because that's where the clues are going to be. The clues are going to be in your soul, aren't they, Laurence?
Absolutely. And that's the thing that we've been talking about the whole time, is that it's not a thinking process, because if you get into a thinking thing about this, then what you're going to do is get into that space of how do I produce bigger and better carrots. And it's really getting beyond that into, well, what's really driving me? And as you say there, you know, what lights you up? What excites you? And work from that. And I like that quote that you've got up there. It says that your life purpose is just under the surface, waiting to be explored and realized.
Fantastic. Now the next resource is actually a special offer that I'm going to make to you today as my way of saying thank you for being on the webinar. It's actually a workshop that I'm putting on the 23rd of May, and I'll give you all of the details right now. And it's how to ensure that your business gives a blockbuster performance. And as you might expect, it's based around the model of the business stage. And what I'm going to do at that workshop is demonstrate exactly how the business stage works, so that you'll get not only an intellectual understanding of the business stage, but you'll get a visceral experience of what the business stage means. And what that will do is give you a new understanding of how your business works which will free you up to work on the areas of business weakness that might be holding you back, plus playing to your strengths and working in your sweet spot. And that's where we want to be. And that's really what Laurence mentioned before when he said you want to do the things that are right for you to do in your business, and you want to get other people to do the things that are not right for you to do. You need to be working in your sweet spot. And as I said, the way we're going to be presenting this this workshop, it's going to be fun. You're going to be entertained, and you'll probably see me in a way that you haven't seen me before. But it's going to be memorable, and you will definitely walk away with knowing exactly where it is in your business that you've got things to work on. And you'll reignite your inspiration for business, remembering why you got into business in the first place, fall back in love with your business if perhaps you've fallen out of love, and you'll be so inspired that you can't wait to get up in the morning and go to it. And that's go to your business. You'll experience that business doesn't have to be boring and can be incredibly creative. So here are the details. It's 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. on the 23rd of May. It's a Thursday evening at Crow's Nest. It's at the Crow's Nest Centre. I'll give you the link to all of the to where you can book. The tickets normally would be $125, but today I'm offering them for $47. But there's also a 2-for-1 ticket to the workshop if you register by the 16th. So that will be, I think it's midnight on the 16th. If you register, you can actually bring somebody along and split the cost. Now, if you find that you can't book by the 16th or you miss it, there is also, if you just want to buy a single ticket, you can save 40% off the single ticket, and you can get that today as well, just to say thank you for being on the webinar. So I want to make this an absolute no-brainer so that you can come and have a bit of fun with me. What you need to do is to quote the promo code webinar when you actually book the ticket, and that will drop the price by 40%. And for the first 7 people who register by the 16th of May, I'm offering a free 90-minute one-to-one session with me to discuss any business issue that you want. And if you wanted to book 90 minutes with me, that would normally cost you around about $700. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I want to help as many people as possible bring soul into their business, and this is my way of offering that to you. So just go to businessstage.eventbrite.com. So businessstage.eventbrite.com. I'll leave that up on the screen. We've reached the point where, hey, Laurence, you're not going to believe this, but we are so on time. I don't know how we managed to do it, but we are. What I'd like to do is to open it up to any questions or comments, because we've been doing a lot of talking. We've been having a nice conversation, but hopefully you guys have got something that you'd either like to share with everybody, or a question that you might like to ask Laurence or I, or both of us, to respond to. And if that's the case, we'd be delighted to do so. You can either if you put your hand up, I'll come to you if you've got a microphone and you can actually you can speak, or if you prefer, just type it into the question box. Okay, great. Well, we do have one question already, which is great, and that question is, I have lots of things I enjoy, but nothing that I would say I'm passionate about in the way that you describe passion. So where would you suggest I start? Wow, what a great question. Laurence, do you want to start off on that one? What would be a good start?
That's really, well, you have your astrology chart. Because that will show you where that diversity is. I mean, I have a really good example with my partner, Danita, who also was very much like that. And when we did her astrology chart, there's a particular point that represents your purpose, and for her it was lots of small birds on the branch of a tree. And so the thing there for her is that part of her purpose is she needs lots of things going on. And so for this person who's asked the question, quite possibly that diversity and all that different activity and different interests and stuff like that is part of the purpose. And what I would be expecting there is that there is some sort of common theme. It could be that they're just an incredible collector, and are able to make great connections between things and have great ideas and things like that. So, you'd need to look at an astrology chart to see where the common theme is there, but there is one.
Mm. And I'd like to add to that, in addition to doing the work with Laurence, which is very valuable, and I've had a session with Laurence, and there's no doubt that what he does will reveal some patterns for you that you might not have seen. Having somebody help facilitate that process for you, for example, using archetypes, might be something that could be useful as well, and that's something that I would be happy to talk to you about if that was something that you wanted to do. But even if you chose not to work with either Laurence or myself, I think that a really good starting point is grabbing the questions that we'll send out and just going and finding a quiet spot, preferably somewhere in nature, where you can connect to a broad horizon. So maybe it's sitting in front of water, or it's one of my favourite spots is down at Centennial Park. I actually have a lot of my meetings down there, as many of you will know, because there's something about connecting with nature that takes you away from the day-to-day mundane and allows your creativity and your inspiration to come to you. So take that list of questions and just sit there or stand or walk or run. Some people meditate while they're running. But go into quiet contemplation and think about the issues that the questions pose. I find that is often a very, very good way of just starting the process. And don't be hard on yourself. This process can take 5 minutes, or it can take 5 years, or it can take a lifetime. It doesn't matter how long it takes. What matters is that you just start the process uncovering what it is. And in fact, I can't remember the quote, I can't remember where it's from, but it's something along the lines of, the meaning of life is to find out the meaning of life. Laurence, do you know the background of that?
No, I think it was one we came up with yesterday when we were talking.
Okay,
it's an original of ours.
It's an original of ours, fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. All right. Are there any other questions that any other comments that people would like to ask or make before we wrap up for today? Kim, you're claiming ownership of that, are you? Yeah, Kim McGuinness is on the line, and she's claiming ownership of the meaning of life is to give life meaning. Oh, we'll give Kim more than happy to give credit where credit is due. Thank you. I don't remember where we saw it originally. Cool. All right. So, so Kim has she's now said it's not hers originally, but maybe she reposted it somewhere. We'll have to investigate that one, Laurence, and find out where it's from. All right. Laurence, we've got about 30 seconds. Is there something that you'd like to just wrap up with in that period of time?
Well, thank everybody for sharing this time with us. It's been a great opportunity, and hope that some of the ideas that we have been talking about make a difference. And just a reminder that to go back and check out those resources. There's the booklet from me, and there's the questionnaires from you, and to really take advantage of that, because there's the old thing of, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you've got to step out and do something to get the process underway. Fantastic.
I was going to say that the next event that I've got obviously is the Business Stage Blockbuster, which is on the screen. But Kim has just posed a really interesting question, which might need to be the topic for the next webinar, Laurence, which is, what if you get your purpose wrong? How can you be sure? Now, I know what you're going to say in response to that, and I've got a lot to say in response to that too, but I think that that's a whole other topic, and maybe we can think about doing another webinar on that topic and related issues. But look, thank you everybody for participating today. It's been wonderful having you online, and thank you so much for your questions and your involvement and your feedback. The recording will be posted as soon as we can get it done, and hopefully that will be within about 3 hours or so. It's just a question of processing and getting it uploaded. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a wonderful day, everybody. As I predicted, the sun has come out in Sydney, and hopefully the sun is shining wherever you are as well. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I look forward to, if I don't see you at the Business Stage Blockbuster, look forward to speaking to you again soon. And Laurence, thank you also for your time today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks, David.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.